But last but not least, my fellow Knicks fans, I want to cover the Atlantic Division landscape, as it will be one of the tougher divisions in the NBA, if not the toughest, from now till I could say the next 3 to 4 years. The only other division I could see that could be just as tough is the Pacific Division, with the Phoenix Suns, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers, and the Golden State Warriors. But we need to look more deep into our division, as a few things changed, but the division remains just as tough. And low-key, the Atlantic Division has been a tough division ever since Kawhi Leonard got traded to the Raptors. We also seen in that same season the Philadelphia 76ers get Jimmy Butler onto their team along with Tobias Harris. So our division was already tough to begin with. And not to mention the Boston Celtics acquired Kyrie Irving about 2 seasons prior. So the landscape of that division was already shifting to be a lot more difficult. So looking at last season, 4 out of the 5 teams made the playoffs. Now for the Raptors, it's a little bit of a tricky situation. They were relocated to Tampa Bay, and it kind of threw their season off a bit because for regular divisional games, they would have to travel further distances. So I don't really hold them too much to the record that they finished with for the 2020 to 21 season. It's kind of a dud for them. But I do expect the Raptors to be in the mix within the division. Now, first, I'm going to start off with the Philadelphia 76ers, as they pretty much lost the leverage that they had to trade Ben Simmons and have the upper hand. Now teams know that they're at the desperate side of the trade because they have to begin to utilize Embiid's prime years a lot better than what they used to do, because Embiid is not even a guarantee to stay healthy within the next upcoming years. And he's definitely going to qualify for a super max extension this season. So will he really extend with them, knowing that Ben Simmons is pretty much an anchor that's dragging this team and keeping them from going up to the next level? And also with the Philadelphia 76ers, they have to ask themselves, is Doc Rivers the right coach for this team? A coach that's pretty much living off his 2008 reputation with the Boston Celtics, but for the most part has pretty much underachieved as a head coach in the NBA. He's coached a number of big name talents, but pretty much has come up short. You look at all the CP3 years with the Clippers, you look at the situation with Kawhi that played out last year with the Clippers, and this season, he's coached a bunch of big name talents, but only has 1 ring to show for it. But their ownership is pretty much locked in for the amount of money they have to spend. They might not even get rid of Doc Rivers, as he's under a 5-year deal, and if they fire him so quickly, they're gonna owe him so much money, and they pretty much are locked into this roster for how much money is already guaranteed. Tobias Harris contract is guaranteed until 2024. Same thing for Ben Simmons up until 2025. And of course, Embiid, they're gonna look to extend him. So they have a lot of money already committed to this team. And I'm not sure how much more into the luxury tax is this ownership willing to go, especially if this Ben Simmons situation does not work out right, because he will be the anchor that's holding this team back from getting up to the next level. And when you take a look at Joel Embiid in his prime years, whoever they trade Ben Simmons for is going to have to somewhat sort of line up with Embiid's prime years. They can't be too young where they're still chasing accolades, but they can't be too much of a vet by the time Embiid's end of his prime years kick in, that this player is going to be too old to make a deep playoff run with Embiid. So it's kind of a tricky situation where they kind of have to not only trade Simmons, but trade Simmons for the right piece that can go along with Embiid's prime years with that timeline. It has to coincide. And to my fellow Knicks fans, I'm not sure if you guys remember during the second half of the season when we played the Philadelphia 76ers at the Garden, there was an overtime game. Embiid didn't play, but Ben Simmons was out there on the floor. And Philly kind of lucked up because I forgot who stepped up in their lineup and made a couple of big jump shots. But I noticed that Ben Simmons, having him on the floor during that overtime was a liability. He was not willing to take any shots. And I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be really awkward for Philly when they make their playoff run. And as we all know, we've seen how it played out. And what we know for sure is that due to Ben Simmons' flaws, Philly this season had to rely on Seth Curry to make a couple important perimeter shots, and last year they relied on Alec Burks to do the same. And Philly cannot have another year of relying on those type of role players to make those big shots. We all know Danny Green is streaky as fuck. Maurice Tybalt, they rely on him to make a couple of big jump shots. Tyrese Maxey, but these guys are not getting paid the big bucks like Ben Simmons to come up big in those situations. So we'll see how this plays out. Next up is the Boston Celtics, a team that's in the rebuilding stage and they don't even know it. Now Boston took their head coach who could not even manage all the personalities that was on the team when Kyrie Irving was there, and they made him president of basketball operations, which the main point of that job is to manage the personnel and make sure the personalities on that roster match and fit. And clearly him and Danny Ainge had different philosophies, because the first move Brad Stevens made was making a trade, getting rid of Kemba Walker and getting Al Horford back. Now, as far as Danny Ainge, I believe the Boston Celtics did need to make a shakeup. Not only he played it way too safe, he kept on hoarding a bunch of draft picks, and instead of moving on from them and trading them for assets, he basically sat on them, thus making his team stagnant. And a few situations that played out, especially with Isaiah Thomas, kind of left a stain from a lot of players throughout the league on what kind of reputation the Celtics had as far as how they treat their players. So it was not a major destination for upcoming free agents. And you can also look at how the situation played out with Kemba Walker. It seems like last year they rushed him too quickly to come back to play just in time for the bubble, and he ended up getting re-injured, and it even affected him into the following season, and he could just never get right. So the Boston Celtics have a few funny ways they've handled certain situations, and overall they just needed a shake-up and a whole new look. But lucky for them, most of the NBA media is based on Boston, so they always paint that team in a good light. But the Celtics are still going to have a few questions to ask themselves. What are they going to do with Marcus Smart and his upcoming extension? And Evan Fournier, are they going to give him a brand new contract, or are they just going to let him walk? So once again, this team is in rebuilding mode and they don't even know it, and the media will never admit to it, because a few seasons ago they were very close into making the NBA Finals. But due to the fact that this team is not really a known destination among NBA players, I'm really going to have to put them in the same ranking as the Raptors as far as being relevant in the conference the next upcoming years. They'll be in the mix, but in order to go up to that next level, Brad Stevens is going to have to pull off a trade to get a really big piece to go there. Because once again, I don't see them being a destination for free agents. Now next is the Brooklyn Nets, which will probably be the most relevant team in the conference. Of course, they have James Harden, age 31, and he will be coming up on an extension, possibly for the 2022-2023 season. So I guess next season, the Brooklyn Nets possibly going to be looking to extend James Harden past 2023. And now also looking at Kevin Durant, he will be age 32, Kyrie Irving, age 29, Joe Harris, age 29. And the reason why I'm mentioning some of these guys' age is that this season, one thing that kind of hindered this team is that they couldn't stay healthy at the same time. Now, very unfortunate for Kyrie, he stepped on, I believe, Giannis's leg in the playoffs. So that's why he was out. But Kevin Durant and James Harden, especially with that hamstring, Harden, they just couldn't stay healthy. And eventually that ended up being the downfall of the Knicks. But low-key, the Bucks are really a great and good solid team. There was not enough respect put on the Bucks. That is a real squad. They were down 0-2 in the series against Brooklyn, and they came back. The same thing in the finals. They were down 0-2 and they came back. So this team definitely deserves respect, but the Brooklyn Nets within our division will be the most relevant team. Unfortunately for them, it will look like they will lose out on Spencer Dinwiddie, as the money and the age that he's at is he's going to be asking for a lot. And I don't think the difference between them signing Spencer Dinwiddie and them getting up to the next level is that much of a difference. Especially the money that they could sign him for it's not going to really sell more tickets or sell more jerseys. It's not going to really make that much of a difference. So I see them losing Dinwiddie to another team, possibly. Hopefully they can get something back in a sign and trade. Who knows? But the main thing for the Brooklyn Nets is that, can they stay healthy for an 82-game season? Do they need to have a little bit of load management? And what was the issue last season with Kevin Durant, where they took him out of that game and quote unquote they said it was due to the pandemic issues, which I don't really believe. He was out a lot longer than the time frame it took for someone to recover from that sickness and then to get back into the court, go through quarantine and start playing again. Something didn't add up. And James Harden, he does have a lot of tread on his tires at age 31. Could he stay injury free? He's done in the past, but now he's entering a different phase in his career where he's getting older. But once again, guys are not really taking that much bumps, and what they're asking James Harden to do is a lot different. So he could actually pace himself next season. And of course, Kyrie Irving, he is injury prone, but relatively this season he has kind of stayed injury free besides stepping on someone's ankle. But the Nets should be the favorites in the division to make it out and get into the finals. But we'll see how long that lasts. I believe this ship may come down a lot quicker than people think it will, due to the fact that these guys might not be able to stay healthy at the same time for long periods of time. I also want to touch base on the Brooklyn Nets bench. That may be another issue besides the health of the starters for this team, is that they don't have much scoring from the bench. But once again, signing a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, the money that he's asking for or potentially asking for, he quote unquote said that he's asking for 5 years, over 125, or something like that. And he started off at that number. It might be too rich for the Brooklyn Nets taste, especially due to the fact that they are already on year 3, dipping into that luxury tax of just having Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and all these guys on the roster. And how many years in a row are they planning on hitting over that luxury tax? Because there is a penalty the more years you bite into it in a row. So Spencer Dinwiddie, is the juice worth the squeeze with him? And also you look at guys like Blake Griffin off the bench, Bruce Brown, Tyler Johnson, Landry Shamet, Jeff Green. Some of these guys are going to have to make decisions on whether they're going to come back to this team or not, and what's going to be their price tag. Now, the Nets do have some bird rights on some of these guys, but not all these guys are going to be willing to come back at that certain price point. But once again, the weaknesses of the Nets is the starters' health and also getting more scoring out of the bench. I mean, there's only so much you can do when a lot of your salary is dedicated towards your starters. And last but not least, the Toronto Raptors. This team has a well-run organization, a great leader in Masai Ujiri. They just re-signed Fred VanVleet. Money-wise, they're locked into a great deal with a two-way player in OG Anunoby. And somehow this year, they ended up with the 4th overall pick. So they're pretty much almost guaranteed another star to be added onto this team. Now, some of the negatives with the Raptors is that they're going to have to make a decision on Kyle Lowry. Are they going to give him an honorary contract, sort of like what the Mavericks do with all their vets that were part of that 2011 championship team? Dirk Nowitzki, JJ Barea, they gave him that sort of deal that said, you know, we appreciate you for helping us get that 2011 ring. Here's an extra 2-year contract where you can earn some money off of it, even though we know you're not in your prime years like you used to be, or you're pretty much on your way out and we're just going to give you this bonus. That's sort of the contract that Kobe got the last time that he re-upped with the Lakers. So that's pretty much the situation that the Raptors are in with Kyle Lowry right now. But just looking at another major potential hole that's kind of really digging away at the Raptors right now is that extension that they gave to Pascal Siakam, because he's not quite living up to it. Pascal is pretty much locked in until 2024, where he's going to be making $35 million per year. And it's still hard to judge him off of last season due to the fact that it was an unusual season due to the pandemic situation and the Raptors being relocated. But he's definitely going to have to prove himself this season especially coming off that bubble where he clearly had a breakdown and a meltdown in the playoffs. He's going to have to make up for it, because if not, it'll be basically almost 3 years in a row where we've seen Pascal kind of not live up to his contract, and pretty much the Raptors will begin to start looking to move him. But when the draft comes around later this month, it's going to be interesting to see with the 4th overall pick, what position are the Raptors going to choose? Because this 4th overall pick could potentially become Pascal's replacement. But at the end of the day, I still expect the Raptors to make a bounce back, especially coming off of last season, because before the year ended, the Raptors were beginning to turn things around. I guess they got used to their travel schedule, which was a lot further distances than before. And I guess they got used to playing down in Tampa Bay. But mainly, the things that are going to stick out for the Raptors is how Pascal bounces back and what they do with Kyle Lowry's contract situation. So once again, my fellow Knicks fans, this is the landscape of the competition that we're up against in our own division. We're not even worried about the conference yet. This is just our own division in which we have to play each of these teams at least 4 times a year. So remaining competitive this season within our division is very important due to the fact that we're trying to recruit future potential free agents to the team so they can see at least we're headed in the right direction. So this is going to be the balancing act that we're going to have to participate in this offseason. We got to make enough moves where we're still in the mix, but we can't dig in too deep, because in 2022, there's a lot of game-changing potential free agents. So let's keep this in mind. And just a reminder, on draft night, Thursday, July 29th at 8:30, I will be going live. You guys can call in or hit up the group chat. Let me know what you think was going on with the team, what you think, what moves we need to do in the offseason. Just overall, drop your 2 cents and let me know what's good. Until next time, you guys stay safe. Peace.